I turned 40 last month, and if you asked me 2 weeks before that, I would have told you I had the best life a guy could ask for. My name's Mike, 40 years old, small business owner, husband, and dad of two. I've always been the kind of person who believes that quiet effort pays off eventually. I worked hard, kept my head down, and provided. I wasn't flashy, but my family never went without. My wife, Lisa, liked to joke that I was the steady one, the type who'd rather fix a leaky pipe than go out drinking with friends. And honestly, I took pride in that. But lately, I'd been feeling something off in our house, like a quiet, invisible distance had settled between us. You ever feel like people around you are laughing about something you're not part of? That's how it started. For weeks leading up to my birthday, everyone kept dropping hints that they were planning something huge. Lisa would smile whenever I brought it up. "You'll remember it forever," she'd tease, tapping her finger against my chest before walking off with that mysterious smirk. My brother, Chris, called me once saying, "Big 4-0, huh? You're finally catching up to me, old man. You ready?" My parents even asked if I could take a few days off work, which was odd because they usually forgot birthdays unless mom could post a picture about it. I figured maybe they were planning a surprise. I'd seen those videos, blindfolded people being led into a room full of friends shouting surprise. Maybe they were doing something like that. My kids, 12 and 15, kept whispering to each other and giggling whenever I entered the room. I'd ask what was so funny, and they'd just say, "Nothing, Dad." In that way teenagers do when they think you're clueless. I pretended not to notice. Honestly, I liked the idea that maybe, for once, I was the center of something. See, I've always been the background guy in my own life. Chris was the charming one, the life of every party, the guy who never seemed to work but always had money. He was the fun uncle my kids adored and the golden boy my parents never stopped bragging about. I didn't mind most days. Someone had to be the reliable one. But every now and then, when I'd watch my wife laughing a little too long at one of his jokes, I'd feel that sting of being quietly overlooked. I buried it, of course. You tell yourself you're being paranoid. You tell yourself you're lucky. The night before my birthday, Lisa told me to sleep in the next morning. "Just relax," she said, fluffing the pillow beside me. "Don't check your phone. Don't make plans. Just trust me." I smiled, kissed her forehead, and said, "All right, I trust you." I actually meant it. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight pouring through the curtains and that quiet house feeling. No footsteps, no kids shouting, no coffee brewing. Just silence. I sat up, checked the clock. 9:40 a.m. No text. No note. Nothing. I figured maybe they were out getting breakfast or decorations. I showered, shaved, and put on a shirt Lisa said she loved, the navy one with rolled sleeves. By noon, still nothing. No happy birthday messages. No calls from mom or dad. Even Chris, who never missed an opportunity to tease me about my age, hadn't texted. I told myself maybe they were all just staying quiet for the surprise. Maybe they'd show up soon. I even set up the living room a bit, lit a candle, straightened up the couch, checked my phone every 5 minutes like an idiot waiting for a call that never came. By 3 p.m., my optimism started to rot. I texted Lisa, "Everything okay?" No response. I tried calling, straight to voicemail. I called my parents. Nothing. My brother. Voicemail. I even checked the group chat with some of my old friends. Silent since last week. I remember sitting there, staring at my phone, realizing it wasn't just a delay. Something was wrong. By 5 p.m., that hopeful feeling had completely died. I ordered takeout because sitting around waiting felt pathetic. I told myself maybe they planned something for the evening. I opened a beer, turned on the TV, tried to act like I didn't care. But my stomach twisted every time I heard a car outside. It was almost 7 p.m. when I finally opened social media. That's when my world shifted. The first post I saw was from Lisa. It was a photo. Her, our kids, my parents, Chris, and a few of our friends, all standing at a lake house. My lake house. The one I'd been paying off quietly for 3 years as an investment. They were all smiling, drinks in hand, with balloons and a banner in the background that said, "Here's to new beginnings." At first, I thought maybe it was a delayed surprise. Until I read the caption. "Don't worry, he's used to being left out." There were laughing emojis. People commented things like, "OMG savage," and "You guys are too much." Then came the videos. One showed Lisa splashing in the water, holding a champagne bottle. Another, the one that burned into my brain, showed her hugging Chris while everyone cheered. He shouted, "To family," and she laughed into his shoulder. My parents were clapping. My kids were smiling. And there I was, sitting in a dark living room, alone on my birthday, watching the people I loved celebrate without me, using my own property as their backdrop. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just sat there, the beer warm in my hand, feeling this strange calm wash over me. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was like something inside me finally clicked, like a puzzle piece snapping into place after years of pretending it didn't fit. I scrolled through every post, every photo, every comment. Some of my friends had tagged me, "Wish you were here, man." And I realized they probably thought I was invited. That's what made it worse. I wasn't even worth lying to properly. I was just erased. By 9 p.m., the silence of the house felt heavy, almost mocking. I could see the reflection of the screen in the window, my own face, expressionless, with that frozen image of Lisa and Chris behind it. I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually I got up, grabbed my wallet and passport from the drawer, and opened my laptop. It was one of those moments when you don't think, you just move. I booked a flight. Somewhere far enough that I wouldn't see their faces, but close enough that I could still handle things if I decided to. I left the lights on when I walked out, locked the door, looked back once, and whispered something I'd never said out loud before. You win. But the thing about saying you win is, sometimes it's not defeat. Sometimes it's just the start of something else. 2 days later, they found out what I did. And that's when my phone started ringing nonstop. When I got on that plane, I didn't have a plan. I just knew I couldn't stay there another second pretending everything was normal. I booked a last-minute ticket to Denver because it was the first destination that popped up, packed a single bag, and turned my phone to airplane mode before takeoff. I remember staring out the window as the city lights shrank beneath me, feeling something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. Not happiness, not relief, just quiet freedom. Like a door that had been locked my whole life had finally opened, even if I didn't know where it led. When I landed, I checked into a modest hotel near the airport. The room was small, smelled faintly of disinfectant and coffee, but it felt peaceful. No raised voices, no passive-aggressive comments, no pretending. I ordered room service and turned my phone on. 17 missed calls. Lisa's name appeared first, followed by Mom, Dad, Chris, and even my daughter. Then the messages started loading. Lisa, Mike, where are you? Lisa, we need to talk. Mom, don't do anything stupid, please. Chris, man, this isn't what you think. Lisa again, please call me. You don't understand. I scrolled through all of them slowly. The tone wasn't apologetic, it was panicked. Not because they realized they'd hurt me, but because they realized something was happening they couldn't control. I didn't reply. I wanted them to feel that silence. The next morning, I went to a diner near the hotel. The kind with sticky menus and burnt coffee that somehow tastes perfect when you're lost in thought. I sat there, thinking back to all the small moments I'd ignored over the years. The jokes at my expense, the little digs from Lisa, the way my parents praised Chris even when he messed up everything he touched. Like the time I bought my first house at 28. I'd saved every penny from my construction business, spent nights doing the wiring myself, and when I finally showed it to the family, Mom said, "Well, it's cute. Chris's condo is bigger, but this feels cozy." Chris laughed, slapped my back, and said, "You'll upgrade someday, little bro." I laughed too, pretending it didn't sting. Or when Lisa and I first got married, and she'd call my hard work boring stability. "You're not spontaneous," she'd say. "Chris knows how to live a little." At the time, I brushed it off. I thought she meant well, that she wanted me to relax. But over time, Chris knows how to live turned into Chris knows what people want, and Chris understands me. I'd tell myself it was just admiration. But deep down, I'd started noticing things. How she'd linger when he spoke. How she'd light up when he walked into a room. How his hands sometimes stayed on her shoulder a little too long when they hugged. I hated myself for even thinking it. Because once you start doubting, it's hard to stop. That birthday proved everything I tried to ignore. The caption wasn't just a joke, it was a confession. Don't worry, he's used to being left out. Who says that about their husband? Who lets their kids see that and laugh along? I didn't sleep much that night. I kept thinking about my kids. Did they know? Did they think it was funny too? Or were they just doing what everyone else did? Going along because it was easier than speaking up? I couldn't decide what hurt more. Lisa's betrayal, or my children's silence. By the third day, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Mike? Thank God. It was Lisa's voice, shaky and rushed. Where are you? We've been trying to reach you for days. I stayed quiet for a few seconds before saying, You at the lake house? There was a pause. No. We came back yesterday. Mike, listen, it's not what it looked like, okay? It was supposed to be a joke. I laughed softly. A joke? My wife hugging my brother at my lake house while I sit home alone on my birthday. That's your definition of a joke. It wasn't like that, she insisted, her voice cracking. We were celebrating, and it just got out of hand. Everyone thought you were coming later. We were going to surprise you when you showed up. Really? I asked. That why the caption said I'm used to being left out? Silence. Then, that was Chris's idea. He thought it'd be funny. I didn't want him to post it. Lisa, I said quietly, stop lying. She didn't respond. Just a soft sound, like she was crying. Please, Mike, can you come home? The kids are worried. The kids didn't look too worried in those photos. Mike, you're scaring me. What did you do? That's when I realized she wasn't crying out of guilt. She was afraid. But not for me. For herself. I didn't do anything, I said calmly. But you'll find out soon enough. And then I hung up. After that, things started unraveling on their end. My parents left 3 voicemails, each more frantic than the last. Mom begged me to let it go, saying, Chris didn't mean anything by it. Dad's message was more direct. Whatever you're planning, don't make this a big deal. Family is family. That line always gets me. Family is family. It's what people say when they've hurt you, but still expect your loyalty. I used to believe it. I don't anymore. Over the next few days, I ignored everyone. I rented a car, drove into the mountains, and stayed at a small cabin I'd found years ago during a work trip. It had no internet, no TV, just a fireplace and the kind of silence that forces you to think. I spent hours writing everything down. The years of small slights, the humiliations, the sacrifices no one ever noticed. It felt like therapy, but colder. The lake house kept replaying in my mind. I'd bought that place quietly after one of my best years in business. I told Lisa it was for the family, something for the kids when they grew up. She'd said, it's too far out. Who's going to use it? Apparently, everyone but me. That's when the realization hit me. Everything they used to humiliate me was something I provided. The money, the comfort, the property, even the idea of the family gatherings came from me. I built the life they used to exclude me. That irony stung deep, but it also sharpened something inside me. When I finally went back online, I saw the fallout starting to show. Lisa had turned her account private. Chris deleted half his posts. My parents had disabled comments after people began calling them out. Apparently, one of my coworkers saw the photos and commented, "Wasn't this Mike's birthday?" That single comment had spiraled into chaos. People started asking questions. Neighbors messaged me saying they saw my family leaving in a rush after someone dropped off an envelope at the house. I hadn't sent anything yet, but that told me one thing. They were nervous. Good. That evening, as I sat by the fire, I got another message. It was from my daughter. Dad, can we talk? Please. That one broke me a little. She wasn't part of the scheme, not really. She was 15, caught between loyalty and confusion. I called her. Dad, she whispered. Where are you? Mom's freaking out. I'm fine, sweetheart, I said softly. Did you have fun at the lake? She hesitated. I didn't want to go. They said it was a surprise for you. But when we got there and you weren't coming, I asked why. Uncle Chris said you wouldn't fit the vibe. Mom told him to shut up. My throat tightened. You didn't post anything, did you? No, she said quickly. I didn't even take pictures. It was weird. Everyone was drinking and laughing. Grandma said you'd be fine. But when Mom and Uncle Chris went outside together, I heard them arguing. About you. That stopped me cold. Arguing? What about? I don't know exactly, she said quietly. I just heard Mom say, you promised it was done, and Chris said, relax, he'll never find out. For a moment, the world went still. I stared at the fire, hearing the crackle but not feeling its warmth. Thank you for telling me, sweetheart, I said. I need you to promise me something, okay? Stay out of it. Don't say anything to anyone. I'll handle this. Are you mad at Mom? I swallowed hard. Not mad, just disappointed. When I hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. Then I reached for my laptop. For years, I'd handled all the finances, joint accounts, Business filings, property deeds, everything. Lisa never cared to look. Chris, on the other hand, had borrowed money from me more times than I could count, always promising to pay it back once the next thing hits. There was a paper trail, a long, ugly one. I didn't know what my endgame was yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't just going to disappear. Not this time. The phone started buzzing again, vibrating across the wooden table. This time it was Mom. I let it ring twice before answering. "Mike," she said, relieved. "Oh, thank God. Honey, please, just come home. We can fix this. You know how your brother gets when he drinks." "Mom," I said evenly, "how long has this been going on?" Her breath caught. "What are you talking about?" "Between Chris and Lisa." Silence. Then a faint, trembling sigh. "Oh, Mike, please don't do this." That told me everything. I didn't yell. I didn't even hang up right away. I just said, "Thank you for confirming," and ended the call. Outside, snow had started falling in soft, quiet flakes. The kind that covers everything slowly, beautifully, like nature's way of erasing footprints before anyone can follow them. I stood by the window for a long time, watching it build up. By the time the sun rose, I knew exactly what I was going to do. And that's when their real panic began. I woke up the next morning to sunlight cutting through the cabin blinds, my phone vibrating again with missed calls. By now, the silence I'd given them wasn't just punishment, it was power. They were spinning, guessing, panicking. I could practically feel it through the phone screen. But I didn't move yet. I wanted to see how far they'd go before they broke their own cover. After making coffee, I opened my laptop again and went through the financial folders I'd kept synced to the cloud. I hadn't touched them in months, mostly because I trusted Lisa to manage the day-to-day household expenses. That was my first mistake. I scrolled through statements, receipts, and transfers. And that's when I saw it. Multiple withdrawals I didn't recognize. Thousands at a time, small enough to avoid triggering alerts, but steady, over a year. All under Lisa's name. At first, I thought maybe she was paying for something for the kids or the house. But then I noticed the memo lines. Investment transfer, property maintenance, loan repayment. Those weren't household transactions. Those were business terms. Mine. It led me down a rabbit hole. I started tracing where the money went. Turns out, Lisa and Chris had opened a small LLC together. It was registered under his name, but with her listed as an advisor. The company description? Luxury rental experiences. I clicked through the details and nearly laughed out loud when I saw the address. The lake house. My lake house. That was the moment everything snapped. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was theft. The property I bought, the business I built, the family I trusted, all being used behind my back, probably for months. I could see the pattern clearly now. The vacation weekends Lisa claimed were girls' trips, aligned perfectly with bank withdrawals. Every time she said she was visiting her sister, they'd been renting out the lake house to other couples for weekend getaways. The payments went to their company. My mortgage, my maintenance, my investment, their profit. I sat there staring at the screen, half numb. It wasn't even the money that hurt the most. It was the way they'd done it quietly, confidently, like I'd never notice. Like I was invisible. I opened my messages again. Lisa had texted 3 more times overnight. "Mike, please answer. You don't understand. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. I'm sorry, okay? I'll explain everything when you come home." That last one got me. When you come home. As if I still had one. I didn't reply. Instead, I logged into the property management portal I'd set up when I first bought the lake house. My name was still listed as the owner, but there was a new sub-user account added 2 months ago, Chris L. It had full access. He'd been using my credentials to schedule guests, manage bookings, even send receipts. I checked the payout logs. Nearly $48,000 over 9 months, split between his and Lisa's shared business account. That's when my hands started shaking. I hadn't realized I was gripping the coffee mug until it cracked slightly in my palm. I set it down before it shattered. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the anger rise and fall like a wave. The more I thought about it, the more the puzzle pieces fell into place. Lisa's sudden interest in travel content. Chris bragging about a side hustle he couldn't talk about yet. The new car my parents said he earned last spring. They weren't just humiliating me for fun. They'd been building something together. Behind my back. Using my money, my property, my trust. It took me a while to process it all. Part of me still didn't want to believe it. So, I called a friend, An old business partner named Daniel. He was one of the few people I trusted. "Hey," I said when he picked up, trying to sound steady. "You got a minute?" "Mike? Dude, where have you been? Everyone's talking about that lake thing." "I know," I said quietly. "Listen, I need your help. Can you run a quick background check for me? Business registry, LLC filings. Look for a company called Blue Haven Rentals." He hesitated. "That your side project?" "Not exactly," I said. 10 minutes later, he called back. "Yeah, I found it. Registered last August. Owner, Chris L. Co-signer, Lisa M. You want me to keep digging?" "No," I said, voice flat. "That's enough." "Mike, what's going on?" I let out a long breath. Let's just say I finally see things clearly. After hanging up, I sat staring at the wall for a long time. The betrayal wasn't an accident. It was orchestrated. And the worst part was, everyone around them probably knew. My parents, our friends, maybe even the kids, at least partly. Because how could something that big stay secret otherwise? That evening, I went for a walk down the snowy path behind the cabin. The air burned my lungs, but it helped clear my head. The mountains around me were quiet, indifferent. It felt grounding. Somewhere between those steps, I realized I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I was calculating. When I got back, I found another voicemail, this time from my mother again, her voice trembling. "Michael, please call us. Your brother made a mistake, but family shouldn't fight like this. He's willing to apologize, okay? He feels awful." I hit replay, just to make sure I heard that right. Willing to apologize. Like that fixed anything. Like stealing from me and parading around with my wife could be fixed with a few sorries. Then came another voicemail, Chris this time. "Mike, look man, I didn't mean for things to get this messy. You know me. I had an opportunity, and Lisa said you'd never use that house anyway. It was supposed to be something small. Then the business started taking off, and," he paused, sighing. "Just call me, okay? We can work this out like adults." I almost laughed. Like adults. That night, I poured myself a drink and opened the family group chat for the first time since the birthday. Hundreds of unread messages. Scrolling through them was like peeling off layers of rot. My parents defending Chris. My wife claiming it was just business. My brother joking about how it's not like you even go there. My kids' names sprinkled in here and there. Mostly them trying to change the subject or calm everyone down. And then I found the one that broke me completely. It was from Lisa, 3 days before my birthday. She'd sent it to Chris privately, but accidentally dropped it in the family thread before deleting it. Someone, probably my son, had screenshotted it and uploaded it to Imager. The message read, "Don't worry, he'll get over it. He always does. He's too passive to do anything anyway." Too passive. That was how she saw me. That was how they all saw me. I stared at that line until my eyes blurred. I'd spent my entire life avoiding conflict, convincing myself that peace was more important than pride. But peace built on humiliation isn't peace. It's slow suffocation. Around midnight, I drove into town and found a small 24-hour print shop. The guy behind the counter barely looked up when I walked in. I handed him a flash drive. "Can you print and bind everything on this?" I asked. He scrolled through the files. "This is like 60 pages. "That's fine." When he handed me the finished packet, I felt oddly calm. Inside were screenshots, bank records, property documents, and every piece of proof I needed. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do with it yet, but I knew I'd keep it close. When I returned to the cabin, I opened my phone again. There were dozens more messages. One stood out, a text from my father. "Your mother's heart can't take this stress. Be the bigger man and let it go." That line did something to me. Be the bigger man. The phrase I'd heard my entire life whenever Chris messed up and I was expected to forgive him. When he wrecked my car at 19, I was told to be the bigger man. When he flirted with Lisa at our engagement party, same thing. When he borrowed thousands and never repaid it, again. I finally realized that in our family, being the bigger man meant be the doormat. So, I decided to stop being either. The next day, I drove back home. I didn't tell anyone. I parked down the street, watching my own house from a distance. Chris's car was in the driveway. It shouldn't have surprised me, but it still twisted something deep inside my chest. I sat there for a long time, staring at the lights glowing through the curtains. At one point, I saw silhouettes pass by, Lisa and Chris, laughing. I don't know how long I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, heartbeat pounding in my ears. Eventually, I got out, walked to the front door, and unlocked it with my key. The laughter stopped. Lisa's voice broke the silence first. Mike, I stepped inside. Yeah, I said quietly. It's me. Chris froze mid-movement near the kitchen island, holding a glass of wine. Lisa stood beside him, pale, eyes wide. Neither of them spoke. I looked at both of them and then down at the table. There was an open laptop showing the booking page for Blue Haven Rentals. My house. My name. Their company. And right then, looking at them, the people who'd gutted my trust for their convenience, something inside me changed forever. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid to destroy the peace they'd built on my silence. And that was the moment everything turned. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Just the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint tick of the kitchen clock. Lisa's eyes flicked from me to Chris, like she was waiting for him to say something first. Chris shifted, putting his glass down slowly, trying to act casual, but his jaw tightened when he saw I wasn't moving. Mike, he finally said, voice a little shaky. Hey man, listen. Don't, I said quietly. My voice came out steadier than I expected. Don't say a word. Lisa took a step forward. We were going to tell you, she started, her tone trembling with that fake softness I'd heard 100 times before. It just got complicated. Complicated, I repeated, letting the word hang. You mean the part where you and my brother started a business with my money? Or the part where you decided to celebrate my birthday without me on my own property? Chris rubbed the back of his neck, trying to force a smile. It's not like that, man. You're twisting it. The business was supposed to be for the family. You weren't around much lately, so I cut him off with a quiet laugh. For the family. That's rich. Lisa's eyes started to glisten, like she was preparing to cry her way out of it. Please, Mike, I didn't mean for it to happen like this, she said softly. I thought you'd be happy once we explained everything. Happy? I asked, stepping closer. You thought I'd be happy that my wife and my brother were running a business together behind my back, using my property, taking my money? She looked down, voice dropping to a whisper. I just wanted to feel like I was part of something. That line hit me harder than I expected. Because for years, I had said the same thing, quietly, to myself, while she and my family made me feel like an outsider. The irony almost made me laugh. But I didn't. I just turned and walked toward the living room. The same room we decorated together years ago when we bought this house. The same couch where I'd fallen asleep after long days at work, where she'd sit scrolling on her phone instead of talking to me. I sat down, hands clasped, staring at the wall. I could feel their eyes on me, but I didn't move. After a long silence, Lisa finally said, Can we talk about this like adults? I looked up at her. Adults don't do what you did. Her lips pressed together. It was a mistake. Chris stepped forward, crossing his arms. Come on, man, stop acting like we committed a crime. You're blowing this way out of proportion. It's just business. Then why hide it? I asked. He didn't answer. Right, I said quietly. Because you knew exactly what it was. I stood up, walked past both of them, and headed upstairs. I could hear Lisa following me, her voice shaking. Mike, please, where are you going? To pack. For what? I stopped in the hallway, turned to look at her. For whatever's next. Her face went pale. You're leaving? I didn't answer. I went into the bedroom, our bedroom, and opened the closet. Half her clothes were gone. Drawers half empty. It shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. The sight of that empty space made everything sink in deeper than any argument could. She'd already been halfway out the door long before I walked in tonight. She appeared in the doorway, eyes red. It wasn't supposed to go this far, she whispered. It was just supposed to be fun. Then Chris kept saying it was working, and save it, I said, zipping up a suitcase. You've had plenty of time to explain. You just never thought I'd show up. She stepped forward like she wanted to stop me, but then froze. Her voice softened. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, I said truthfully. But whatever it is, it won't involve you. I brushed past her and walked downstairs. Chris was still standing by the kitchen island, scrolling on his phone, pretending to stay calm. You can't just leave, man, he said. Think about your kids. That stopped me. I turned slowly. Don't you dare bring them into this. He shrugged, trying to sound casual. They're still family. You walking out like this, it's not going to look good. Something about the smugness in his tone nearly made me lose it. But I didn't. Instead, I picked up the stack of documents I'd printed in Denver, the proof of every withdrawal, every booking, every lie. I dropped it on the counter in front of him. He looked down, frowned. What's this? Your business plan? I said coldly. Read it before you dig yourself any deeper. He flipped through the first few pages, and his expression changed instantly. The color drained from his face. Where did you get this? From the same place you got my money, I said. Lisa came down the stairs behind me, her voice trembling. Mike, please don't do this. You don't need to ruin everything. I turned, eyes meeting hers. You already did. Then I left. It was almost midnight by the time I got in the car. I didn't know where I was going, just that I couldn't stay there another second. I drove aimlessly through the city, streetlights blurring past, radio off, thoughts spinning. I ended up at a cheap roadside motel outside town. Checked in under a fake name. When the front desk clerk asked, business or pleasure? I just said, neither. That night was the lowest I've ever felt. Not angry, just hollow. I laid on that rough motel bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint buzz of the neon sign outside. I thought about everything, my marriage, my kids, my parents, the years I'd given to a family that never once stood up for me. It's strange how fast love can turn into clarity. I didn't cry. I didn't even try to sleep. I just started making lists, something to give shape to the chaos in my head. One column for assets, one for debts, one for people I could trust, and one for everything they'd taken. By dawn, I had a plan. Not revenge yet, not even close. Just survival. Step 1, secure what was still mine. Step 2, prepare for the fallout. Step 3, make sure they couldn't touch me again. I drove to my office first. The building was dark, quiet. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and started changing passwords, business accounts, bank logins, property management portals. Every trace of shared access was deleted or revoked. Lisa's name disappeared from everything she'd once controlled. Then I called my lawyer, a quiet, methodical man named Harris who'd helped me set up my business years ago. Mike, he said after I explained, this isn't just emotional betrayal. It's financial misconduct. You have grounds for legal action. I'm not ready for that, I said. Not yet. I just need to make sure they can't take another cent. Understood, he said. We can freeze the accounts. I'll draft the paperwork. By noon, I was sitting in a coffee shop, sipping black coffee while watching the freeze confirmations roll in. Each notification felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Then my phone buzzed again, Lisa. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Where are you? She asked, voice trembling. Why? Because the bank called, she said. They said the accounts are locked. What are you doing? Cleaning up, I said. You made a mess. Her tone shifted from panic to anger. You can't just freeze everything. What about the kids? The bills? The mortgage? I let her words hang before saying, the mortgage is paid. The kids will be fine. As for you, well, you have Chris. She went quiet for a moment. Then, you're punishing me. No, I said. I'm protecting myself. I hung up before she could respond. That evening, I parked outside the school just to see my kids from a distance. They were walking out with backpacks, laughing with friends. I stayed in the car, watching quietly. My daughter looked around once, like she sensed something, but she didn't see me. I didn't want her to. Not yet. I wasn't ready to face them. Not until I figured out how to explain that the people they loved most had torn our family apart. Back at the motel, I sat in the dark, scrolling through old photos on my phone. Family trips, birthdays, holidays. Every smile now felt like a lie I'd believed too easily. The longer I looked, the more a strange calm began to replace the sadness. It wasn't acceptance, it was something colder. Clarity, maybe. I realized something important that night. I had already lost everything that mattered. There was nothing left they could take from me. And once you reach that point, you stop being afraid. So I stopped hiding. The next morning, I checked out of the motel, drove to the lake house, and unlocked the door. The air inside still smelled faintly like wine and cheap perfume. I opened the curtains, let the light flood in, and sat down at the same table they'd used for their celebration. For hours, I sat in silence, replaying everything in my mind. Every insult, every smirk, every be the bigger man. I wasn't thinking about revenge anymore, not yet. I was thinking about dignity, about what it would mean to finally walk away and let them live with the emptiness they created. By the time the sun set, I knew I couldn't go back. Not to the house, not to Lisa, not to the version of myself who kept forgiving everyone just to keep the peace. That man was gone, but something new was forming in his place. Someone patient, deliberate, unafraid to burn bridges if that's what it took to rebuild a better life. And somewhere deep down, I could already feel it, the calm before something much, much bigger. The first few weeks after walking away were quiet, almost eerily so. I rented a small apartment in the city, a place with nothing sentimental attached to it. No framed photos, no familiar furniture, no echoes of arguments that once lived in the walls. Just a bed, a desk, and a view of the skyline. It wasn't much, but it was mine. At first, I didn't know what to do with myself. I'd spent so long defining my worth through other people, my family, my wife, even my brother, that silence felt unnatural. Every morning, I'd wake up expecting to hear Lisa clattering dishes downstairs or my kids arguing over cereal. Instead, I got the distant hum of traffic and my own heartbeat. It was jarring, but freeing. Work was the only thing I still had structure in. I threw myself into it like a man rebuilding from ashes. The business, my construction firm, had been limping along while I was distracted trying to hold my marriage together. Once I focused again, I realized how much potential it still had. I met with clients personally. I expanded into renovation projects. Within a few months, we landed a deal restoring a string of old lakefront cabins, ironic in a way. While Chris and Lisa had turned my property into their playground, I was quietly turning half the county's lakeshore into profit. The work helped. It gave me something to build again, something that wasn't poisoned by betrayal. But rebuilding your life isn't just about money. It's about rediscovering what you were before people convinced you to shrink. I started running in the mornings, reading again, even cooking, badly at first, but it felt good to make something just for myself. I hadn't realized how long I'd gone without choosing for me. There were moments of weakness, of course. Nights when I'd scroll through photos of my kids and wonder if they missed me. Times when I'd almost pick up the phone to call Lisa just to hear her voice, even though I knew she'd only twist it into guilt. But every time I came close, I reminded myself, she'd already made her choice. And mine was to rise. The funny thing about stepping away from toxicity is that people notice. Some out of curiosity, some out of regret. Word spread quickly in our small circle that I'd cut ties. Some said I'd lost it. Others whispered I was up to something. I didn't correct them. Let them wonder. What I didn't expect was how fast the tide would turn once people saw me thriving. Old clients reached out, saying they'd always preferred working with me, but didn't want to get between family. Former friends who'd laughed at those birthday posts started texting again, saying things like, "Man, I didn't realize it was that bad." Hypocrisy doesn't surprise you once you've seen what people will do for convenience. Still, I kept my circle small. Daniel, the friend who'd helped me confirm the LLC scam, became my right-hand man. We met every Friday morning at a diner downtown to strategize. One day, as I sipped my coffee, he slid a folder across the table. "You're not going to believe this," he said. Inside were financial updates, the kind of detailed records that only someone with access could find. The Blue Haven Rentals account was struggling. After I froze the joint funds, Chris had tried to reopen it under a new name, but without my property and without Lisa's charm to lure investors, it tanked. "They're bleeding money," Daniel said, smirking. "Looks like karma works fast." I didn't smile. "Karma's not done yet," I said quietly. It wasn't about revenge, not then, it was about control. For the first time in my life, I wasn't reacting. I was directing. Meanwhile, I made sure everything I owned was secured. Every document was in my name alone. Every account protected. I transferred the lake house into an LLC solely under me, making it legally untouchable without my consent. Then I took it a step further. I rebranded it. Not as a rental, but as a retreat. I hired a small management team and converted it into a private getaway for executives and clients. What once was their playground became my business asset, clean, legitimate, and profitable. Within months, bookings doubled what they ever made through their shady side hustle. I didn't announce it. I didn't post it online. But I made sure word got around subtly. A mention here, a client tag there. The kind of success that trickles through whispers. That's when the calls started again. First from Mom, then Chris, then Lisa, none of which I answered. It wasn't until I got a call from my lawyer that I realized they were getting desperate. "They've filed for mediation," Harris said. "They're claiming you're withholding shared assets." I almost laughed. "Shared assets? She stole from me." He chuckled. "I know. But legally, this is their last move before they crumble. Want me to shut it down?" "Not yet," I said. Let them talk. I started attending the meetings calmly, dressed sharp, composed, the opposite of the broken man they expected. Lisa looked shocked the first time she saw me. She tried to smile, like she could soften the memory of what she'd done. Chris looked uncomfortable, fidgeting the entire session. The mediator asked if we could find common ground. I said, sure, as long as that ground doesn't include theft, infidelity, or fraud. Lisa winced. Chris muttered something under his breath, and I leaned forward slightly. What was that, Chris? He didn't answer. That was the moment I realized they weren't just ashamed, they were scared, because they saw what I'd become without them. After the meeting, I stepped outside, breathing in the cold air. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel overlooked. I felt untouchable. It's strange, the power you gain when you stop begging to be understood. Over the next few months, everything grew faster than I could have imagined. My business expanded into neighboring states. I hired more staff. Revenue tripled. I was traveling often, networking with people who saw my work, not my family reputation, as my worth. I even started mentoring younger contractors, helping them avoid the mistakes I'd made. It felt good to give back, to be respected for something real. But even as life improved, a quiet part of me stayed anchored to the pain that started it all. Not out of bitterness, but purpose. I wasn't done. There were still loose ends, and I wanted to tie them on my terms. One evening, I returned to my apartment after a long week and found an envelope slid under my door. No name, just my address. Inside was a photo, me standing outside the lake house, talking to a group of clients. On the back, written in Lisa's handwriting, "We need to talk. For the kids." I set it on the counter, staring at it for a long time. There was a time I would have dropped everything, rushed to her, tried to fix things. Not anymore. That night, I poured myself a drink and stared out the window at the city lights. For the first time in my life, I felt what real power tasted like: quiet, patient, earned. The kind that doesn't need to shout. But something inside me still stirred. Not revenge, not yet. Just the cold awareness that they hadn't learned anything. Not Chris. Not Lisa. Not my parents who still defended them. They thought I'd moved on. That my silence meant forgiveness. What they didn't realize was that I was only getting started. Because you can't truly rebuild until you tear down what was built on lies. And soon, they were going to see just how much stronger I'd become without them. It started small, quiet, methodical, and almost invisible. I wasn't interested in shouting my revenge from rooftops or making dramatic scenes. I wanted precision. I wanted permanence. I began with what mattered most to them: reputation and comfort. Chris always thrived on appearances. The funny, successful brother. The guy who could talk his way through any situation. He built his life on networking and charm, always one phone call away from his next big deal. So I started there. Through Harris, my lawyer, I initiated a formal complaint about Blue Haven rentals, not as a personal grievance, but as a professional report. Fraudulent ownership claims, tax misreporting, misuse of property, all verifiable, all documented. I submitted every file I'd collected, complete with the forged digital signatures Lisa had used on the property forms. It took less than 2 weeks for the audit to begin. Chris's side business went from a vanity project to a liability overnight. His accounts were frozen, his clients notified, and his business license suspended pending investigation. The best part? I never had to say a word. The system did it for me. A few days later, I got a call from Daniel. "You'll want to see this," he said, sending me a link. It was a local news article: luxury rental owner under investigation for fraud allegations. There was Chris's photo, smiling awkwardly beside a blurred-out image of the lake house. I didn't smile. I just took a long sip of coffee and whispered, "One down." Lisa was trickier. She thrived on control, on being the one who knew more, who had the upper hand emotionally. But people like her have a weakness: they need an audience. So I used that. I reached out to a mutual friend of ours, Karen, the kind of woman who loved to gossip but hated being caught in the middle. I told her, casually, that I was worried about Lisa's situation. I made sure to sound concerned, not vindictive. "She's still under investigation too," I said softly. "And the bank records, well, they don't look good." By the next morning, that conversation had spread like wildfire. Suddenly, Lisa was the subject of whispers. People she'd once bragged to about her success began avoiding her. Invitations stopped coming. Her friends drifted away, not out of malice, but fear of being associated with scandal. Social exile. Slow, silent, and devastating. Within weeks, she went from throwing wine parties to deleting her social media entirely. I didn't need to see her crumble publicly. Knowing she was forced to live without her spotlight was enough. But the final step, the one I'd been planning the longest, was for my parents. For years, they'd made me feel like I was the lesser son. The one who worked too much, talked too little, never lightened up like Chris. They'd always defended him, even when he hurt me. Especially then. So I gave them a lesson in consequences they couldn't ignore. I invited them to lunch one Sunday, first contact since everything went down. They came, cautious but curious, probably assuming I was ready to make peace. Mom even brought a pie, the same kind she always baked when she wanted to smooth things over. We sat in the restaurant, a quiet, upscale place overlooking the river. I let them talk first. Michael, Mom said, using the full name she only used when she wanted control of the conversation. This whole thing has gone too far. Your brother is a mess, Lisa's beside herself, and the kids are confused. Can't you just let it go? Dad nodded. You've made your point, son. Families shouldn't destroy each other like this. I looked at them calmly. Families shouldn't steal either. Mom sighed, setting down her fork. You always take things so personally. Chris was just being Chris. I finished for her. And I was supposed to be the bigger man again, right? Silence. I leaned back, letting the weight of the moment hang. Then I pulled an envelope from my jacket and slid it across the table. Since you both like being involved in your children's successes, I thought you should see the latest paperwork. Dad frowned, opening it. His eyes widened. This is a deed. Yeah, I said, smiling faintly. To the lake house. I renamed it. It's now a private retreat, part of my new hospitality division. I own it outright. Bookings are full through next summer. Mom blinked, confused. You kept it? Oh, I didn't just keep it, I said. I turned it into something profitable. Something clean. Every cent they tried to steal, I made back twice over. They looked stunned. I continued, voice calm but sharp. So, from now on, if you want to visit family, you'll have to book a stay at market rates. Guests only. Mom's face went pale. You can't be serious. I'm done being the family charity, I said. I built everything myself. I lost it because I trusted the wrong people. And I rebuilt it because I stopped listening to the ones who said family first while they drained me dry. Dad's jaw tightened. You're punishing us. No, I said. I'm freeing myself. I stood up, left enough cash to cover their meals, and walked out. They didn't follow. That night, I drove back to the lake house for the first time in months. It was quiet now, professional, organized, almost unrecognizable. The staff greeted me politely, unaware of the history buried in those walls. I walked to the dock and stood there as the water shimmered under the fading sunset. I thought about everything. The humiliation, the silence, the rebuilding. Revenge, I realized, isn't always about destruction. Sometimes, it's about creation. Building something so unshakable that it makes the people who broke you realize they never had power at all. As I stood there, my phone buzzed, an unknown number. I answered, half expecting more noise. Mike. It was Chris. His voice was strained, quieter than I'd ever heard it. They're taking everything, man. The audit's destroying me. I don't know what to do. I listened. The old me might have felt pity, might have tried to help. But I just said, you'll figure it out. You always do. He tried to say something else, but I hung up. The wind picked up, brushing against the water. For the first time in my life, I felt completely, utterly at peace. And yet, deep down, I knew this story wasn't done. Because the people who break others so easily never truly accept defeat, not until they lose something they can't get back. And for them, that was coming next. 3 months passed before the last pieces fell into place. The storm I'd quietly started had finished its course, and all that was left was silence, the kind that comes after something heavy collapses. The audit on Chris's company turned into a full-blown investigation. Fraud, tax evasion, misuse of funds, the works. Turns out, when you try to run a business using money that isn't yours, the law gets interested very quickly. He'd used false income statements to secure a line of credit, then defaulted once the rental payment stopped. Every document tied back to Blue Haven Rentals, and through that, to him. When the news broke that charges were being filed, It wasn't a small headline this time. It made local TV. Local entrepreneur under investigation for property fraud. The image they used was of Chris leaving the courthouse, eyes down, reporters shouting questions he couldn't answer. My parents tried to keep it quiet, of course. They said things like, "It's just paperwork, and he'll bounce back." But the truth was clear. His reputation, the only thing he'd ever cared about, was gone. As for Lisa, she wasn't charged with anything criminal, but the damage was done. Her name was listed as a participating advisor in the business records, which meant every background check for the rest of her life would flag it. She lost her job at the design firm after clients began asking uncomfortable questions. The HR department called it a breach of professional trust. I heard through a friend that she had to move into a small apartment across town. Chris didn't stick around for long. Once his assets were seized, he started blaming her for everything. They split within weeks. I wasn't surprised. Parasites can't live off each other. My kids stayed mostly with me after that. The courts sided with me during the custody review, especially once the financial evidence came out. The judge's words still echo in my mind. Stability belongs with the parent who values truth. Lisa cried in the courtroom when the decision was read. She tried to reach for my daughter's hand, but my daughter quietly pulled away and looked at me instead. That moment, that quiet, wordless act of loyalty, meant more than any victory could. Afterward, Lisa asked if we could talk privately. I agreed, mostly because I wanted to hear what she'd say now that everything was gone. She looked tired, worn out, a shadow of the woman I once knew. "I never thought you'd actually go through with all of this," she said, voice cracking. "I didn't plan it," I told her. "I just stopped protecting people who hurt me." Her eyes filled with tears. "Wasn't there another way?" "There was," I said. "You could have just loved me." She didn't say anything after that, just stood there as I walked away. My parents still call sometimes, mostly to ask if I'll help Chris get back on his feet. I don't yell, I don't argue. I just say, "I hope he learns something from all this," and hang up. I've realized that the only way to win against people who feed on guilt is to stop offering it. Business continued to grow faster than I could manage. The lake house became the centerpiece of my new hospitality company, a high-end retreat for executives, couples, and even a few celebrities. The same place that once represented humiliation now stood as proof that I could turn betrayal into profit. Every time I walked the property, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't bitterness. It wasn't even satisfaction. It was peace. Last summer, I hosted a private event there for the company's anniversary. As the evening sun dipped behind the trees, my daughter came up beside me on the dock, smiling. "Do you ever miss them?" she asked softly. I looked at the water for a long moment before answering. "Sometimes. But then I remember who I became because of what they did." She nodded quietly, as if she understood something beyond her years. Later that night, when everyone had left and the lights from the house reflected off the water, I walked out alone and sat on the edge of the dock. The same spot where I once stood feeling broken, invisible, forgotten. The air was cool. The lake was still. For the first time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. I took a deep breath and said it out loud, just to hear the words in the open air. "You can lose everything and still win." And with that, I stood up, turned off the last light, and left the past behind for good.